वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। मूकं करोति वाचालं पद्मं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं हरिः ओम। Jai Shri Gurudev, Jai Shri Prabhupada. We are reading from Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 40. Is it? Yeah, 40. Okay. So Arjuna is remembering Lord Shri Krishna and all the things Krishna did with him. The military strength of Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences, and thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I, seated on the chariot, was able to cross over it, and only by his grace I was able to regain the cows and also collect by force many helmets of the kings, which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. Srila Prabhupada's prophet. On the Kaurava side, there were many stalwart commanders like Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Karna, and the military strength was as insurmountable as the great ocean. And yet, it was due to Lord Krishna's grace that Arjuna alone, sitting on the chariot, could manage to vanquish them one after another without great difficulty. There were many chances, there were many changes of commanders on the other side, but the Pandavas side, Arjuna alone on the chariot driver by Lord Shri Krishna could manage the whole responsibility of the great war. Similarly, when the Pandavas were living in the palace of Virata incognito, the Kauravas picked up quarrel with King Virata and decided to take away his large number of cows. While they were taking away the cows, Arjuna fought with them incognito and was able to regain the cows along with some booty taken by force, the jewels set on the turbans of the royal order. Arjuna remembered that all of this was possible by the grace of the Lord. 15. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who in the battlefield withdrew the speculative power and strength and enthusiasm of the great military flanks made by the Kauravas headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona and Shalya, etc. The arrangement was expert and more than adequate, but he, Lord Krishna, while going forward, did all this. Srila Prabhupada spoke. The absolute personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna explained himself by his plenary Paramatma portion in everyone's heart, and thus he directs everyone in the matter of recollection, forgetfulness, knowledge, the absence of intelligence, and all psychological activities. Bhagavad Gita 15.15 it is Sarvasya Chaham Vidhi Sannivishchum Tohanam Cha Vedescha Sarve Rahameva Vedyo Vedanta Krit Videva Chaham 15 DG Sarvasya Chaham Vidhi Sannivishcho Matta Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha Vedescha Sarve Rahameva Vedyo Vedanta Krit Veda Videva Chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. As the Supreme Lord, He can increase or decrease the duration of life of a living being. Thus the Lord conducted the battle of the Kurukshetra according to His own plan. He wanted the battle To establish Yudhishthira as the emperor of the planet and to facilitate his transcendental bliss, he killed all who were on the opposite part of the omnipotent will. The opposite party was equipped with all military strength supported by big generals like Bhishma, Drona, and Shalya. And it would have been physically impossible for Arjun to win the battle had the Lord not helped him by every kind of tactic. Such tactics are generally followed by every statesman, even in modern warfare, but they are all done materially by powerful espionage, military tactics, and diplomatic maneuvers. But because Arjuna was the Lord's affectionate devotee, the Lord did all this himself without personal anxiety by Arjuna. That is the way of devotional service to the Lord. One second. What is the way of devotional service to the Lord? Such tactics are generally followed by every statesman, even in modern, but they are all done materially by powerful instruments. But because Arjuna was the Lord, the Lord did all this himself without personal anxiety. Okay. All the tactics. Text 16. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Bhurishrava, Shushruма, Shalya, Jayadratha, Bahalika, all directed their inconceivable weapons against me. But by his, Lord Shri Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Shri Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of the Lord Nrsimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons of the demons used in 7 shloka. Narhari Dasam. Narhari Dasam. What a beautiful name for Prahlad Maharaj. Narhari Dasam, servitor of Nrsimhadev. Yosap, Yopash, Vishu. Na Upashruhu, not touched. Narhari Dasam. Nrihari. Nrihari Dasam. Eva, like Asurani, weapons employed. Wow. Srila Prabhupada's book. The history of Prahlad Maharaj, the great devotee of Nrsimhadev, is narrated in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhavatam. Prahlad Maharaj, a small child, only of 5 years, became the object of envy for his great father Hiranyakashipu, only because of his becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. The demon father employed all his weapons to kill the son Prahlad. But by the grace of the Lord, he was saved from all sorts of dangerous actions by his father. He was thrown in the fire, boiling oil, on the top of a hill, underneath the legs of an elephant, and he was administered with poison. At last, the father himself took up a chopper to kill his son, and thus Nrsimhadev appeared and killed the heinous father in the presence of the son. Thus, no one can kill the devotee of the Lord. Similarly, Arjuna was also saved by the Lord, although all dangerous weapons were employed by his great opponents like Bhishma. Karna, born of Kunti as the sun god prior to her marriage with Maharaj Pandu, Karna took his birth with bangles and earrings, extraordinary signs for an undaunted hero. In the beginning, his name was Vasushen, but when he grew up, he presented his natural bangles and earrings to Indradev, and henceforward he became known as Vaikartana. After his birth from the maiden Kunti, he was thrown in the Ganges. Okay. Later he was picked by Adhiratha, and he and his wife Radha, both Adhiratha and he and his wife Radha brought him up as their own offspring. Karna was very charitable, especially towards Brahmanas. There was nothing he could not spare for a Brahmana. In the same charitable spirit, he gave in charity the natural bangles and earrings to Indradev, who, being very much satisfied with him, gave in return a great weapon called Shakti. He was admitted as one of the students of Dronacharya, and from the very beginning there was some rivalry between him and Arjuna. Seeing him constant rivalry with Arjuna, Duryodhana picked him up as his companion and gradually grew into greater intimacy. He was also present in the great assembly of Draupadi's Swayamvara function, and when he attempted to exhibit his talent in the meeting, Draupadi's mother declared that Karna could not take part in the competition because of his son being a Shudra carpenter. Although he was refused in the competition, still, when Arjuna was successful in piercing the fish target in the ceiling and Draupadi bestowed her garland upon Arjuna, Karna and other disappointed princes offered an unusual stumbling block to Arjuna while he was leaving with Draupadi. Especially Karna fought with him very valiantly, but all of them were defeated by Arjuna. Duryodhana was very much pleased with Karna because of his constant rivalry with Arjuna, and when he was in power, he enthroned Karna in the state of Anga. Being baffled in his attempt to win Draupadi, Karna advised Duryodhana to attack King Drupada, for after defeating him, both Arjuna and Draupadi could be arrested. But Dronacharya rebuked them for this conspiracy and they refrained from the action. Karna was defeated many times, not only by Arjuna but also by Bhimsen. He was the king of the kingdom of Bengal, Odisha and Madras combined. Later on, he took on the active part in the Rajasuya sacrifice of Maharaj Yudhishthir, and when there was gambling between the rival brothers designed by Shakuni, Karna took part in the game, and he was very pleased when Draupadi was offered as a bet in the gambling. This fed his old grudge. When Draupadi was in the game, he was very enthusiastic to declare the news, and it is he who ordered Dusashan to take away the garments of both Pandavas and Draupadi. This is very important. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning this. These days, people are just saying Karna is so good. Why did they did like this, that? Mark all of this. This whole story is important. This fed his old grudge. When Draupadi was in the game, he was very enthusiastic to declare the news. And it is he who ordered Dusasana to take away the garments of both Pandavas and Draupadi. He asked Draupadi to select another husband because, being lost by the Pandavas, she was rendered a slave of the Kurus. He was always an enemy of the Pandavas, and whenever there was an opportunity, he tried to curb them all by means. During the battle of Kurukshetra, he foresaw the conclusive result and he expressed his opinion. Due to the Lord Krishna being the chariot driver of Arjuna, the battle should be won by Arjuna. He was always differed with Bhishma, and sometimes he was proud enough to say that within 5 days he could finish up the Pandavas if Bhishma would not interfere with the plan of action. But he was much mortified when Bhishma died. He killed Ghatotkacha with the Shakti weapon obtained from Indradev. His son Vrishena was killed by Arjuna. He killed the largest number of Pandava soldiers. At least there were a severe fight with Arjuna. At last there was a severe fight with Arjuna, and it was he only who was able to knock off the helmet of Arjuna. But it so happened that the wheel of his chariot stuck in the battlefield mud, and when he got down to set the wheel right, Arjuna took the opportunity and killed him, although he requested Arjuna not to do so. Nakta or Bhurishava. Bhurishava was a son of Somadatta, a member of Kuru family. His other brother was Shalya. Both the brothers and the father attended the Swayamvar ceremony of Draupadi. All of them appreciated the wonderful strength of Arjuna due to his being a devotee friend of the Lord, and thus Bhurishava advised his sons of Dhritarashtra not to pick any quarrel with them. All of them also attended the Rajasuya Yajna of Maharaj Yudhishthir. He possessed one Akshauhini regiment of army, cavalry, elephants and chariots, and all these were employed in battlefield of Kurukshetra on behalf of Duryodhana's party. He was counted by Bhima as one of the Yudhapatis. In the battle of Kurukshetra, he was specially engaged in the fight with Satyaki, and he killed 10 sons of Satyaki. Later on, Arjuna cut off his hands, and he was ultimately killed by Satyaki. After his death, he merged into the existence of Vishwadeva, Tirtha or Sushrama, son of Maharaj Vridhakshetra. He was the king of Trigatadesha and he was also present in Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi. He was one of the allies of Duryodhana, and he advised Duryodhana to attack Matsya Desh, Dridbhanga, during the time of cow stealing in Vitranagar. He was able to arrest Maharaj Virata, but later Maharaj Virata was released by Bhima in the battle of Kurukshetra. He also fought very valiantly, but at the end he was killed by Arjuna. Jayadratha, another son of Maharaj Vriddhakshetra, he was a king of Sindhu Desha, modern Sindh, Pakistan. His wife's name was Vishala. He was also present in Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi, and he desired very strongly to have her hand, but he failed in the competition. But since then he always sought the opportunity to get in touch with Draupadi. When he was going to marry the Shalya Desh in a way to Kamyavan, he happened to see Draupadi again, was too much attracted to her. The Pandavas and Draupadi were then in exile after losing the empire of gambling, and Jayadratha thought it would be wise to send news to Draupadi in an illicit manner through Kotishaya, one of his associates. Draupadi at once refused vehemently the proposal of Jayadratha, but being so much attracted by the beauty of Draupadi, he tried again and again. Every time he was refused by Draupadi, he tried to take her away forcibly on his chariot, and at first Draupadi gave him good dashing and he fell like a cutthroat tree. I think beating. Okay, he tried to forcibly on the chariot, and first Draupadi gave him a good dashing and he fell like a cutthroat tree, but he was not discouraged and he was able to force Draupadi to sit on the chariot. This incident was seen by Dhaumya Muni and strongly protested the action of Jayadratha. He also followed the chariot, and through Dhatrikeya, the matter was brought to the notice of Maharaj Yudhishthira. The Pandavas then attacked the soldiers of Jayadratha and killed them all. And at last Bhima caught hold of Jayadratha and beat him very severely, almost dead. Then all but five hairs were cut off from his head, and he was taken to all kings and introduced as a slave of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was forced to admit himself to be the slave of Maharaj Yudhishthira before all the princely order, and in the same condition he was brought before Maharaj Yudhishthira. 1 second. Then all but 5 hairs were cut off his head, and he was taken to all the kings and introduced as a slave of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He was forced to admit himself to be the slave of Maharaj Yudhishthira before all the princely order, and in the same condition he was brought before Maharaj Yudhishthira. Maharaj Yudhishthira was the kind enough to order him released, and when he admitted to being a tributary prince under Maharaj Yudhishthira, Queen Draupadi also desired his release. After this incident, he was allowed to return to his country. Being so insulted, he went to Gangotri in the Himalayas and undertook severe types of penance to please Lord Shiva. He asked the benediction that to defeat all Pandavas at least one time. Then the battlefield of Kurukshetra began. He took sides with Duryodhana. In the first day's fights, he was engaged with Maharaj Drupad, then the Virata, and then Abhimanyu. While Abhimanyu was being killed mercilessly, surrounded by the great generals, the Pandavas came to his help, but Jayadratha, by the mercy of Lord Shiva, repulsed them with great ability. At this, Arjuna took a vow to kill him, and by hearing this, Jayadratha wanted to leave the warfield and asked permission from the Kauravas for this cowardly action, but he was not allowed to do so. On the contrary, he was obliged to fight with Arjuna, and while the fight was going On, Lord Krishna reminded Arjuna that the benediction of Lord Shiva upon Jayadratha was that whoever would cause his head to fall on the ground would die at once. He therefore advised Arjuna to throw the head of Jayadratha directly onto the lap of his father, who was engaged in penances at the Samanta Panchaga pilgrimage. This was actually done by Arjuna. Jayadratha's father was surprised to see a severed head on his lap, and at once he threw it on the ground, and the father immediately died, his forehead being cracked in 7 pieces. Wow. Text 17. It was by his mercy only that my enemies neglected to kill me when I descended from my chariot to get water from my thirsty horses. And it was due to my lack of esteem for my Lord that I dared engage him as my chariot driver, for he is worshipped and offered services by the best men to attain salvation. Srila Prabhupada spoke. The Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna is the object of worship both by impersonalists and by the devotees of the Lord. The impersonalists worship the glowing effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of eternal form, bliss, and knowledge, and the devotees worship him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those who are below even the impersonalists consider him to be one of the great historical personalities. Those who are below even the impersonalists consider him as one of the great historical personalities. The Lord, however, descends protected all his specific transcendental pastimes, and thus he plays the part of the most perfect master, friend, son, lover. His transcendental relation with Arjuna was in friendship, and the Lord therefore played the part perfectly, as he did with his parents, lovers, and wives. While playing in such a perfect transcendental relation, the devotee forgets by the internal potency of the Lord that his friend or son is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. Although while playing in such perfect transcendental relation, the devotee forgets by the internal potency of the Lord that his friend or son is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although sometimes the devotee is bewildered by the acts of the Lord, after the departure of the Lord, Arjuna was conscious of his great friend. But there was no mistake on the part of Arjuna, nor any ill estimation of the Lord. Intelligent men are attracted by the transcendental acting of the Lord with a pure, unalloyed devotee like Arjuna. In the war field, scarcity of water is well known fact. Water is very rare there, and both animals and men work simultaneously on the warfield, constantly required water to quench their thirst. Especially wounded soldiers and generals feel very thirsty at the time of death, and it sometimes so happens that simply for want of water one has to die unavoidably. But such scarcity of water was solved in the battle of Kurukshetra by the means of boring the ground. By God's grace, water can be easily obtained from any place if there is a facility for boring the ground. The modern system works on the same principle of boring the ground, but modern engineers are still unable to dig immediately whenever necessary. It appears, however, from the history as far back as the days of Pandavas, that big general Arjuna could at once supply water even to the horses, and what to speak of men by drawing water from underneath the hard ground simply by penetrating the stratum with a sharp arrow, a method still unknown to modern scientists. Text 18. O King, his jokings and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses unto me as O son of Pritha, O friend, O son of the Kuru dynasty, and all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. He Partha, he Arjuna, Sakhe Kuru Nandaneti. Ah, so beautiful. Narmanya Udara Ruchira Smita Shobitani. I don't know the meter. He Partha, he Arjuna, Sakhe Kuru Nandaneti. Text 19. Generally, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit, and loiter together. And at the time of advertising oneself for the acts of chivalry, sometimes if there were any irregularity, I used to reproach him by saying, "My friend, you are very truthful." Even in those hours, when his value was minimized, he, being the supreme soul, used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son. Srila Prabhupada's purport, since the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna is all perfect, his transcendental pastimes with his devotees never lack anything, any respect, either as a friend, son, or lover. The Lord relishes and reproaches the friends, parents, and fiancés more than the Vedic hymns offered to him by great learned scholars and religionists in an official fashion. I think we can read it. Text 20. The Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel, cowherd men, and while I was guiding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The important point in this verse is that how was possible to defeat by a gang of ignoble cowherd men, and how such mundane cowherd men could touch the bodies of the wives of Lord Shri Krishna, who were under the protection of Arjuna. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has justified the contradiction by research in the Vishnu Purana and Brahma Purana. In these Puranas, it is said that once the fair denizens of heavens pleased Ashtavakra Muni by their service and were blessed by the Muni to have Supreme Lord as their husband. Ashtavakra Muni was curved in 8 joints of his body, and thus he used to move in a peculiar curved manner. The daughters of the demigods could not check their laughter upon seeing the movements of the Muni, and the Muni, being angry at them, cursed them that they would be kidnapped by rogues, even if they would get the Lord as their husband. Later on, the girls again satisfied the Muni by their prayers, and the Muni blessed them that they would regain their husband even after being robbed by rogues. So, in order to keep the word of the great Muni, the Lord himself kidnapped the wives from Arjuna's protection. Otherwise, they would have at once vanished from the scene as soon as they were touched by the rogues. Besides that, some of the gopis who prayed to become the wives of the Lord returned to their respective position after their desire was fulfilled. After the departure of Lord Shri Krishna, he wanted all his entourage back to Godhead, and they were called back under different conditions only. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jai Shri Gurudev, Jai Shri Prabhupada.